Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and we're with a super cool guy and a really great player and an extremely successful guitar player with Jon Conley out of Nashville. Jon's been playing with Kenny Chesney for 8 or 9 years now, and he's got a great session career. He's actually worked for a variety of artists in multiple genres. He's primarily known for guitar playing, but he's also hired on sessions and tours to play fiddle, mandolin, bouzouki, banjo, bass, and sing background vocals as well. He's originally from Paragould. Did I say that right? Paragould?
That's right. Yeah,
Arkansas.
Paragould,
You're the first person I've ever met from Arkansas, man.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, man. Very, very cool. He started out playing at local talent shows and reviews, and by the time he was 14, he'd become an in-demand session musician, which blows my mind. We'll talk about that. He eventually took his talents to Branson, Missouri to play for Grammy Award-winning entertainer Buck Trent, while also being a multi-instrumentalist and musical director for the late International Steel Guitar Hall of Fame legend Tom Brumley. At the age of 24, Jon Conley migrated to Nashville, Tennessee. Within months of being there, he received a call from bassist Willie Weeks, who played with George Harrison, Donny Hathaway, and Wynonna, and he was asked to audition over the phone. You gave some good phone, man. That's all right. He was then hired for one of the most coveted tours at the time, which was the Revelation Tour for Wynonna Judd, where he remained in her band for 5.5 years. He then decided to focus on building up his session clientele when he received a call to tour with Leann Rimes. He was then promoted to musical director for Leann, and after performing with her for 3 years, again, he went back to focus on session work. After 5 years of countless sessions for a plethora of recording artists, Jon got a call to go on the road with 4-time CMA Entertainer of the Year, Kenny Chesney. He's continuing to make an impact, contributing to recordings for various artists while in his 8th year of touring with Kenny Chesney. He lives in Kingston Springs, with his wife Katie and their daughter Polly. Jon's performed or recorded with Wynonna Judd, the Judds, Lee Greenwood, Leann Rimes, Kenny Chesney, Buck Trent, Tom Brumley, George Jones, Taylor Swift, Joe Walsh, Steve Miller, and Sammy Hagar, Vince Gill, Amy Grant, John Mayer, the Boston Pops Symphony, Jimmy Tittle, Marty Stuart, Johnny Cash, Terri Clark, Allison Moorer, Luke Combs, and Savannah Conley. Man, that is impressive. Are you sure you're on the right show? Thanks. And thank you.
Just show me how old I'm getting here. It took me a long time to do that
all right,
stuff.
Man. That's great. And thank you so much for your time, Jon. Hey, to be excellent in one thing is tough enough as a guitar player, but you're proficient in like multiple, you're way beyond a multi-instrumentalist. I was curious what made you pursue all these other instruments and how did you learn them?
Well, I was always drawn to guitar first. That's always been my main instrument. I've loved guitar. There's pictures of me being a toddler, dragging a toy guitar around that I don't even, so I've loved guitar longer than I can even remember, but I've also always just loved music. And, it's just when I hear something that moves me, I want to be able to do that. And, especially when I was younger, you feel like, well, you can do anything, what's stopping you from that? So I started really young. I started playing really young. And so when I would hear different instruments, I'd, try to learn how to play them and stuff. And I don't know that I'm excellent at all of them, but I enjoy playing all of them. And I feel like I can find things to do with them that, help people and stuff. And I enjoy it. And also I got to say my mom was always very encouraging in that I usually wanted to focus on guitar. But she would sometimes say, "Hey, you might want to play some of those other instruments. I guess she was thinking more marketing or something like that, or like, trying to keep my options open and everything." Yeah. And so I'm glad I listened to her. So
was she involved in music?
She was. She sang in what they called a chorus in college, and it's basically like a choir, and it was a Church of Christ choir in at Harding University, and that was all a cappella. So I grew up in the Church of Christ, hearing a lot of harmonies and stuff. And that's another thing I think that really drew me to music, is just hearing harmonies and stuff, and hearing them at a pretty young age. But she never did it professionally, and she was a school teacher, and so basically she's very humble about her music, but she sang to me a lot as a kid, and I would sing with her and stuff. So it definitely had a big influence on me.
That's very cool. I can't tell you how many really successful players I've interviewed. Probably 40% of them grew up playing music in the church, and church music was such a heavy thing for them. I mean, it literally launched careers of 40% of the guys I've talked to.
Oh yeah, and what's weird though is in Church of Christ though they don't use instruments. So wow. I didn't use them in the church. I would hear the singing and stuff, and hear the parts and stuff. But then I would play outside of church and everything, and it's and there. What's weird though is, like, in my family, hardly anybody played though. Nobody played instruments, and so. I mean, me saying that I wanted to be a guitar player was as likely of like, okay, well, being an astronaut or being a professional football player or whatever. It just, seemed really abstract. But at the same time, my parents, totally believed in me and enabled me to, take guitar lessons and things like that, and always encouraged me in it. So.
And I want to give some props to you, man. The last artist that I read that you played with was Savannah Conley. That's your daughter. So obviously the music gene did pass down. Talk about that. And she said she's got a record deal. Yeah,
she does. She's with Low Country Sound, which is Dave Cobb's label. And,
wow.
Yeah.
You could do worse.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And she actually went to a BMI John Prine honorary. It was some kind of banquet or something. They were giving him honors and everything, and so she's man, I'm really proud of her. She's just really writing great and singing great and running her band now. She's I used to always help her with her bands when she was young and stuff, but in the last 2 or 3 years, she's been kind of taking that by the helms, and that's not an easy thing to do. So she's doing great.
And she's a young woman too.
And just 21.
Being that age, you don't have the coping skills and the wherewithal to do all that, man. So it's great that you're there for her.
Well, I try my best, and I try to stay away when she doesn't need me, and then be there when she does. So.
I bet it's really rewarding playing with her, when you're playing your guitar and and her stuff.
Well, it's great. Now I didn't play on this last record because Dave produced that, which it's all good. It was really good. I'd produced her EP before that, and sometimes you need fresh, And actually, I'm really thankful that she's working with Dave, because I've always hoped that she'd be able to work with another producer. That you can only, when you have that father-daughter relationship, it's a great thing, but there's also a thing of, like, sometimes people, just think about some things that you'll talk to your parents about, but maybe that you wouldn't want to talk to your parents about, and that kind of thing. So, it's kind of like the same thing musically speaking. Sometimes I really think athletes kind of the same way, like sometimes playing for their dad, it can be a great thing, but sometimes it's better, like a coach can get something out of them that just because of it not having that relationship. So, but man, she had me come out and go out on the road with her last weekend, and I went to played with her in Athens, Georgia, and that was just a real blast. And
that's so cool.
She announced that, hey, tonight my dad's playing guitar, and they gave me a big ovation.
That's so cool, man. Yeah. God, that had to make you so proud, though, man, being on stage with her when she said that.
Yeah, it really did. In fact, it was more powerful than what I even expected that it would be. Like, it felt really rewarding that she was able to kind of bring me out on her terms, which is it's kind of like, that's the hard part about being a parent, is you raise your kids, hopefully to not live at home, to be able to be independent and to live their lives. And when you have a musical relationship with your kid, it's the same thing. You want to be there for them and protect them, which I did most of her life. But then it reaches a point where, okay, now it's time for her to go out on her own, and so this has been a really great thing, but it's also been a learning thing for both of us of like, and she's got some really good people in her corner that are taking really great care of her and stuff. So I'm really excited for her.
Well, and it's really great having you around, because she will be a lot less likely to be susceptible to some of the, the unscrupulous aspects of the music business.
Well, and it definitely has helped her growing up around it. Like when I was a kid, I didn't know any professional musicians and stuff, but I mean, for her to be around, professional musicians, celebrities, songwriters, producers, it was like no different like being around a plumber or a school teacher or a lawyer or whatever. It was just another job. It's very normal to her. So she's got, and also I can't say enough good things about Belmont University. I think she learned a lot about the business aspect of it while going there, and that helped her a lot of like preparing her for what she's doing now as well.
That's great, man. Well, I'm really happy for the two of you guys. That's nice.
Thank you.
So, man, I got to ask you, how on earth did you become an in-demand session musician at 14?
Man, I gotta say, that, my parents, when I was really young, 13, 14 years old, they didn't really want me playing clubs, but they knew that I needed to, get out there and play with some great musicians and everything. There were some guys that took me into the clubs, and I remember I played this one gig. It was actually at a watermelon festival. That was the first gig I ever played with these guys. The name of the band is Cuz. They were all cousins, and I was like the adopted cousin, I guess. But they were all like
Wait a
old
minute.
enough to.
I thought in Arkansas everybody was cousins.
Oh, no, see, and you can't see my feet here. I am wearing shoes, by the way. I am wearing shoes, and you can see that I have teeth.
Yeah, you have great teeth, man. I noticed that. Those are very impressive teeth, dude.
Well, man, listen, I hear you, man. But actually, this band was actually in Kennett, Missouri, which it was right across the state line, so maybe that made a difference. I don't know, but I kind of doubt it. But yeah, I lived in Kennett, Missouri as well for 8 years, Paragould, Arkansas, 10 years, and Kennett for 8 years. And, but playing that gig with them, I remember, I asked them, I said, hey, when do you guys rehearse? And they said, this is rehearsal, so, and we had like 4 hours, and so, I was stumbling all over myself, and the bass player, whose name's Gary Wilcox, I still go back and play with him. I try to go back and play with him at least once a year, and that's Gary, cool, he could tell I was kind of bummed on myself, and he said, hey man, you're doing great. Just hang in there and, keep listening. And I said, well, man, do you think, y'all could give me some recordings and stuff? That way I could be more prepared. And he said, man, trust me, this will be good for you. If you'll do it now while you're young and learn how to improvise and just play by ear and like roll with the punches, it'll help you down the road. And so I did. I hung in there and started just really trying to improvise. And so, I made a lot of mistakes, but learned from my mistakes and everything. And so, one of the singers in the band did a lot of lead vocals, Keith Croft. He did a lot of jingle work in a studio called Soundplex in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And he told me that, hey man, a guy had moved to Nashville who was doing a lot of the session work, and they've got an open chair there, and I think you would be really good at it. And so I started getting calls to do that. And
at 14.
At 14, yeah.
Man, so, that is so cool. And you probably didn't think anything of it because you were just thinking, I can play guitar and make a couple of bucks.
Honestly, I didn't even think about the money at first. I've always played sports as well. I had injured not really injured my knees. I grew really fast over summer, and I got jumper's knee is what they called it. And I had to lay out of sports for about 6 months. And that's when Eddie Van Halen was just huge. And so I was playing anywhere from 8 to, 12 hours a day, just, practice and practice and practice. And so when I got a chance to, start working in the studio, I've been reading a lot of Guitar Player magazine stuff, reading about Steve Lukather. And so I was really excited because I really, and that's another thing. I'd always made my own recordings in my garage where my brother had a boom box. And I had a boom box, and I would take. My dad was a pharmacist, and so they would sell these plastic Sertron tapes that you could buy, like at his drugstore. And so I'd buy a bunch of those, and I'd be recording an acoustic guitar and singing, and then take that tape out and put it in the oven, push play, put another one in, and just keep doing that. Adding maracas, adding background voice. Of course, the pitch is shifting and everything, all the pulled up noise and everything. But I was really learning though how, to think in layers and in parts and stuff like that. And so when I got to go into Soundplex, I mean, it was like stepping into another world. I remember they had the old shag carpet on the walls and everything, and everybody smoked. I probably have lung damage from just those years of I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, and it's but I inhaled a lot of smoke during those years because everybody was smoking in the studio. And but man, we would stay up all night, and I just loved that feeling of just shutting the doors and just like I said, I wasn't in Arkansas, I wasn't in America, I was in wherever. I was in the studio. Man. It was just awesome.
So you're just so in love to be so overjoyed to be playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to record too, that was something that, I played most of my life, but to be able to record, Eric Cruz was the engineer there, and his dad, Don Cruz, used to be the session manager at American Studios in Memphis, which Chips Bowman had. And
I was going to say, that's where Reggie played.
Yes, Reggie Young. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I interviewed Reggie. I remember that. Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned Reggie, when I moved to Nashville, my wife was a secretary at Studio 19, which Scotty Moore built that studio.
Okay.
And Larry Rogers was one of the owners there, and he produced a lot of country acts in Memphis and in Nashville. And when Reggie couldn't do certain sessions, he would give me a shot and let me play on sessions. I got to play on sessions with the Memphis boys,
That's
Mike Beach on bass. Oh yeah, it was so great, man. I mean, getting to play with these guys that played on, all the Elvis records and well, not all of them, but a lot of them.
That's fantastic, man. It's playing with people so much older than you always makes you better, anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always tried to do that. I mean, that even goes back to the basketball days where my brother was 5 years older than me, and I always played against guys older than me to make me better ball players. So I always tried to do the same thing with music, and always try, and I'm still doing that. I still try to play, not even older, but even like people that I take gigs a lot of times that maybe I'm not that good at to try to get better at certain things, and stuff. And I think it's always good to try to stretch yourself.
Yeah, definitely. In anything you're doing, you got to. Yeah, it was an expression. School's never out for the pro.
That's right.
Like that,
Absolutely, I totally believe that.
Yeah, me too. You got to get your game up there all the time, man. So you moved to Branson and then to Nashville. What prompted both of those moves?
Well, I was doing shows in, there was a theater show in Paragould at the Collins Theater. Gary Prince had a show called Gary Prince and the Country Heart Band. It was, I was in that show and playing guitar and doing that. And there's a guy named Jim Austin that used to come to the shows, and he also used to watch me play basketball. And he was a coach for many years and loved music. So I was kind of special to him, the fact that I did both,
Yeah.
And he's a great track coach, and helped so many kids through the years in sports, but also liked to help people musically when he could, although he didn't really know how to play or anything. He just took an interest in it. So he took me to Branson to go audition for a band called the Texas Gold Miners, and they wanted to hire me, but the guy that owned the theater didn't want to add the extra musician. But less than a year later, the guitar player got a gig playing with Ray Stevens, so they called me up. They remembered, and so that's when I moved to Branson.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 19.
Wow. That's amazing, man. That's really cool. So, I mean, you're like really ahead of the curve. I know you're not going to sit and say, I'm not trying to say, oh yeah, I'm really, but I mean, that's the fact is you're really ahead of the curve. That's really cool.
Well, I mean, in backing up when I said, when I started playing in the studio, it wasn't about the money, but what I did realize working in the studio and then also working in Branson later, okay, when I was in, junior high, I was making more money doing what I loved in the studio than some of my friends that were like, having to work out in the fields, working in the cotton fields or
Sure.
working down at McDonald's or whatever. And what's funny about that though is that I remember still, that being said, sometimes I felt like, I wonder what it's like. Like I didn't quite fit in certain circles because guys would be talking about things going on at work and stuff. And it's like my world was so different. And I was kind of like, sometimes I kind of wish that I was flipping burgers with my buddies just so I could kind of have that in common with them and stuff. But, that was my job, playing. And then later on when I went to Branson, that became my full-time job. That was the first time when I was able to like make a living. And the same thing, I had friends that were working in the factories and stuff that, I found out, I was like, well, man, I can make as much money playing guitar, as I could working down at the factory. So this is pretty cool. So
it's funny. You mentioned something about what you said about sort of like the isolation of being a musician. That's a pretty common feeling that everybody has of, I really didn't fit in and, I was in my room 8 hours a day and it was awkward, but when I was out playing, I was able to participate in social things. That was kind of like one of the few times, otherwise I was in my room and I kind of liked doing that. It's funny, the consistent themes across so many players.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to think of there's some kind of personality test. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm an ENFJ basically is what they do. I can't remember. My daughter's laughing right now. I can just tell because she's like, "Dad, it's this," whatever. But I can't remember what it's called. But the whole thing with that to me, I have a weird personality because I'm a people person, but I crave solitude. So it's kind of, I really have to find a balance between the two, which actually for music, it works out great because I love playing, working with people and playing for people and stuff, but I also love to get off on my own and write and record and be by myself. And same deal with touring. Like a lot of times touring, I'll hang out with my buddies, but then sometimes they know that, we're all that way. Like, hey, I'm going to disappear for a couple of days. I'm going to go hiking or whatever and just go, disappear for a while. And so I'm not what you would call an introvert, like I know some guys are very introverted, it's more of that thing of like kind of in and out of the two, because I can tell when I've done too long of one or the other, if I've been around people too long and I need to get away, or I've been by myself too long and I'm talking way too much, because it's like all of a sudden I'm engaging with people again, so.
But it's good that you recognize that because it's healthy it's really important to take care of yourself. I think that's in this country for some reason, that is really not emphasized, and I think like if you took better, if we all like did things that made us happy, internally happy, not happy at someone else's expense. Like I think this would be so much less stress and everybody would be so much more chilled out in general,
Oh yeah. I that's something that I've gotten a lot more outspoken about, like in time, is mental health, because I feel like, depression is a real deal, especially in the music business, and a lot of creative types are prone to that. And I'm prone to that. I've had my runs with depression through the years and everything, but I've found that to be very true what you're talking about. I find that it's all hands on deck, and you need to attack it spiritually, physically, emotionally, and if you're only doing one, medically sometimes,
sure.
Like absolutely, and there should be no shame in that, because, that's the thing that I've seen too many people and too many friends, either turn to drugs or alcohol even suicide at some extreme, cases. So
Sure.
I'm being a lot more open about that now because, especially after I've lost 3 friends to suicide. So that I've been very more open.
Man.
Yeah. Very more open about that.
Sorry.
About no, man, I appreciate it. But
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that though, about, because I do think it's so important, to just try to, be as healthy as you can, nobody's got to, you don't have to spend 3 hours in the gym, or you don't have to become a monk or whatever. But I really do believe, I believe in prayer, I believe in, exercising, and I think that, psychiatry and psychology can be great things, if you reach those places, and stuff. So I'm always trying to encourage people to, do what you need to do to be healthy,
Man, I've been going to the gym with pretty good consistency since I'm 23 and I'm 54 now. And without a doubt, forget about my health and my ability to move around. It's changed my life. It's just, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
About me when I'm,
sure.
And I think therapy's great. I've been to and therapy's changed my life, helping to deal with issues, all that stuff is super important, man. I agree with you 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting. I interviewed a guy. I don't know if you know this band, a band called Zebra.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Who's behind the door?
Right. So I interviewed
Yes.
Randy Jackson. Right. And it was really weird interviewing because they were like a big band up in the Northeast in the New York area. And I've probably listened to their first album, man, like 500 times. So it was really, I don't get starstruck, but his music was so deep in my DNA. It was like, I can't believe, I was like,
Yes.
this is weird, Randy. And he said, and I asked him a question. I said, what's been the biggest change for you over the last 10 years in your life? And he said, I suffered from depression most of my life. When I was younger, I medicated with drugs and alcohol, exactly what you said.
Yeah.
And he said, I finally, about 10 years ago, decided I was going to do something about it. And I'll never forget. And he said, I'll never forget driving to the office, and I'm sitting there in the parking lot, and it was the most difficult thing for me to do, to get out of the car and go into that office. And I almost turned around because I felt so overwhelmed, dealing with this, that, kind of like admitting, or not even admitting, just, hey, asking for help for mental illness. And he said he's so happy he did, because, I think he's been involved in that for quite some time, but he said over the last 10 years, he's really got his medications down and his routines down and his life things down, like exercise and all the other stuff. And he said his life is so much better now. The quality of it is, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is really important. And I think people need to deal with that, and asking for help is always a good thing, not a bad thing, man.
Yeah, man. I'm so glad to hear that too, because you love to hear the happy stories like that, because that's the thing. I definitely do not sit in judgment of my friends that, struggle with dependency or have been taken by dependency. But a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times it's self-medicating, and,
totally.
and man, I get it. I mean, I totally get it, but at the same time, that's also why I'm being, I try to be more open about it. And, I don't, because I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink. I don't, do drugs. And I'm not trying to, sound like a goody two shoes or anything, but I started playing music so young, being around things so young that, but I had a great family, and I knew that I could be in environments, and not have to partake of it. And actually, that's probably the best thing that my parents could have done, is allowed me to be in those. Took a lot of, that was a big risk for them, because that really easily could have gone the other way. But man, when I would see what it would do to people around me, some people handled it better than others, but for me, it did not make me desire it more. So I was fortunate to kind of be around, but a lot of people, they didn't have that, chance to see that. Maybe it was peer pressure or whatever it may be and then when you get in our industry, like I've always said, that the only thing worse than bad behavior is rewarded bad behavior, and
absolutely, man.
And it's like, I actually know of, gigs that I missed out because I didn't. But, I was just telling someone the other day that I really do believe in, the same thing that can get you hired can get you fired, and you just have to be true to yourself. And so I never resented anyone that didn't want to hire me because they knew that I wasn't going to be, in the middle of the party and everything. But it's funny, some of the same people that didn't do hire me now because they're, like you're saying, they're getting straight and and I don't look at them any differently. Like,
sure.
No grudges or no, what I get it. I totally get it, man. But I'm just trying to be really encouraging as far as that goes. Like, as far as, just to encourage, young people and also people, my age and older, that like you said, there's always somebody that's dealing with that, and they just need to know that there's no shame in it, and then just to reach out for help, because it is available.
Man, thank you. That's very cool of you. When you got to Nashville, were you kind of like surprised that you got such a big gig as your first job, or was it very normal because that was just a trajectory?
Oh man, I was shocked, actually, and I was coming back and forth from Branson to Nashville because my wife was a singer as well, and she and her sisters were singing in Branson, and but I knew that I had this gut feeling that we were going to wind up in Nashville. I just, I did feel that. I felt that trajectory. But I didn't. I really thought that it was going to take a lot longer than what it did. But I looked at it like, okay, I'm going to go back and forth until I'm making not making more money, because I was turning down gigs in Branson, but like having more gigs in Nashville than I was in because I was willing to take lower paying jobs somewhere where I was wanting to be. And I do think that's important. Like, sometimes you got to take a step back to take 2 steps forward, and so I got a gig, going around with Eric Horner. He was playing a bunch of line dance clubs back in the day and stuff. And so a buddy of mine who had played on, I had an independent deal when I was a kid. I made a couple of records, and they didn't really do much or anything, but it sold some locally and everything. But I met some good musicians, and a guy named Kent Wells was playing guitar.
Is that Derek Wells' dad?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
In fact, one of the gigs where Kent was playing with me, he had been out on the road, and I see this little kid run across the gym floor in a little Tom Cruise bomber's, jacket, like from Top Gun or whatever, like this late 80s, and just bear hug his dad. But yeah, Derek was probably like maybe 4 or 5 years old, something like that. And I was 17. But Kent had, played with me and it really encouraged me and said, man, you can do this for a living. So when I moved to Nashville, I called him and said, I'm looking to, try to find a gig. Well, I just expected he'd like refer me on like a new artist or maybe an older artist that, didn't pay a lot or whatever. And he said, hey, Wynonna's looking for a guitar player. And
holy
I said,
smokes.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was like, well, okay. And he said, man, I really think you'd get the gig if you just get in and get heard. So 2 weeks go by, and because he said he gave my number to Willie Weeks, and because he was Wynonna's band director, and so I called Kent back a couple weeks after it had gone by, and I said, hey man, I hate to bother you, but Willie never called me. He said, well man, I'm going to do something I normally don't do, but I'm going to give you his number, because I really think if you can just get the guitar out of your case, I think you got a shot. So I called Willie, and Willie's a very private guy, so but he was like, how'd you get this number? And I was like, and it's, what's funny is Ken had said, hey man, you can't be humble, man. You got to go in like, hey, you got to be confident. You got to say, hey, I'm the man for this job. And so he said, how'd you get this number? I said, Kent Wells said I'm the man for this job. And my voice was shaking and everything. And so
that's great.
I'm like, oh no, man, this couldn't go any worse, And so he said, well, man, he said, we had to hire a guy, but I got your number. And so I was just disappointed I didn't even get the guitar out of the case, 2 weeks later, I'm out on the road with Eric, the guy I was telling you about, playing the line dancing, line dances and stuff. We were up somewhere up, I think, in Cleveland, Ohio. And this is back whenever, you had the phones in the room where the light would be blinking. I mean, they still have these, but, now everybody uses itself. Yeah. And so I called down the front desk, and the guy says, "You need to call home. It's an emergency." So I'm freaking out. I'm thinking something's wrong with my wife.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, we'd moved to Nashville by this time, and we were in like a little 1-bedroom apartment. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, is she okay? So I called her, and she said, "Hey, Willie, Week called and said he wants you to call him first thing in the morning." So I called him, and he said, "Hey man, this guy's not working out, and I need to know, can you do this gig?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "No, I mean, can you do this gig?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can," and so he said, "Well, when I get back home, when you get back in, I get back in, give me a shout." So that's when I called him up, and he asked me if I had a guitar hanging around, and I was a big Steve Cropper fan. So he asked me to play a song that Steve had played on, and apparently that was the thing that was kind of tripping a lot of guys up, because a lot of guys in Nashville at that time were more into the chicken picking stuff, which I did. I loved playing and doing the chicken picking thing too, but a lot of guys weren't playing soul music, and if they did play soul music, they didn't play country, so it's like they didn't do both. So that was where, growing up in Arkansas, playing in the studios and everything, it helped me out, doing the different, and same deal with Branson. I played some blues bands in Branson, and then playing in the country shows and stuff. So when I played the Steve Cropper stuff over the phone, that's what, got me the gig. So
that's amazing. Is that your only phone audition?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
in fact, I'm going to meet somebody that's done it, other than me, but I mean, this was, I got to do the math here. That was, 23 years ago, and I still haven't met anybody that's done
That's awesome, man. That is totally cool. What a great story, man. I'm so happy you got that gig. Very cool, man. Thank you for sharing that. Phone audition. That's classic, man.
I might want to add one more thing to that too, that made a really big impression on me. When he called me in to play with the band, he didn't say you got the gig over the phone, but that's what got me in the door to go play with them, and down at he came over to the house, and I'd bought everything Wynonna ever breathed on by that time, and played along with CDs a little bit, and he said, "Man, I want to bring you in with the guys and see how it works with the guys and everything." So it was this is all like over a month's process, and the only reason why I'm bringing more up about this is I remember at that time, nobody really knew who Tom Bukovac was, but he had just gotten a gig in Wynonna's band. And then Eddie Bears, who had played, drums on a million records. And then, of course, Willie's playing on it. Those were the guys that I was getting to play with, to go in and play.
How old was Tom at that time?
Tom was 3 years older than me.
Yeah,
he was,
okay.
He was 27 and I was 24. And so when I went in, and Willie had told me, he said, "Man, I do need to make sure I listen to, there's some other people wanting, me to listen to some other guys. Are you okay?" I said, "Well, of course. Yeah. You need to do what you." So when I went in, this is back in the 90s when guys, it looked like there was a Maytag moving sale or whatever, because they had all these refrigerator racks with all this gear and stuff. And I really felt like David and Goliath going in, because all I had was a Fender Bassman and a couple of Strats and a Pittsburgh Steelers duffel bag with little pedals that I didn't even have, a board. I never had batteries in them and everything. And so, like, when they gave me my shot to audition, I looked like a kid playing with his Tonka trucks or something. I had to get down the floor and hook everything up and plug in. But I wound up getting a gig, and that taught me a really important lesson, because I remember feeling kind of panicked leading up to that, thinking maybe I should go buy a bunch of new gear and everything, and try to make a big impression. But I thought, I need to do what I do and be who I am, and win or lose, just go in and be authentic and do what I do, and it wound up paying off. So,
how did you have where did that thought come from?
As far as
that, I got to go in there and do what I do and be who I am, because that's, I could see that you were probably intimidated. I would imagine that you were intimidated in that situation. You got it's your first big gig, other guys, you know, and you stayed true to yourself. Then I think that took some courage.
Well, I mean, I feel that I've always felt that God put a desire for me to play music, and like I said, even it predates even my memories, you know, of like wanting, like something was placed inside of me, and as I look back, you know, like on all the different, like I didn't have brothers and uncles that played, you know, that I could ask questions. I had to do you know, I had a great guitar teacher, Hoyt Wooten, who taught me as a kid, and he really encouraged me, you know, to do that. But I've always felt like that was my calling, if you will, you know, or that was my destiny, is to play music. You know, I really do. I felt that, and now I was scared. You know, I was nervous. I had all these doubts, but that's kind of, you know, where I kind of feel like that was kind of that God moment. I felt like where, like, no, you're you, you know, and you go in there and, you know, be you, you know, and I didn't know if I would get it. You know, I didn't know necessarily like, yeah, I got this, because, you know, I felt like God was going to, you know, get the gig for me. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, sure. I think that if you're asking where the thought came from, I think that that's probably where it would have come from, is just that settling, because I guarantee I was praying.
Yeah, but I give you a lot of credit to have the wherewithal to just do nothing, you know, and just like be at peace. I mean, that's a tough thing at a young, you know, nowadays, you know, we're older. It's like a natural thing. It's like, hey, I'm me, and if you don't like it, it's totally cool. But at a young age, it's tough to have that. So I give you credit for that. That's a good call, man.
Well, thank you. And I think it's what wound up, you know, getting me the gig, actually.
Yeah, clearly.
That, you know, me and Willie just, you know, hit it off immediately. I was so green, man. I was so green. And he, you know, I was too green and too stupid to be overly intimidated, you know, by him. And so I think he loved me for that, because, you know, I just, we had a great thing between, you know, we would always go back and forth and kid each other and stuff. But he's one of the biggest. I learned so much from working with him at a young age. Man, he and also working with Tom was so great as well. Like, you know, I remember I got home from the gig, and I told my wife, so, you know, after I got the gig, I said, well, I know one thing, I'm not the best guitar player in the band.
That guy is,
but, you know,
yeah,
it's so
guy is something else.
Yeah, he's so great. And so, you know, just really getting to, you know, be in a band with all those guys, man. There was just so many. It was a 13-piece band, and
wow.
And yeah, and I was the youngest one. Yeah, we had people in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. You know, all different kinds of, you know, backgrounds, and it was like that show, The Real World. Wasn't that the name of the show on MTV?
Which
where
one?
The MTV show, where it was like one of the first reality shows. They got a million shows like that now, where they stick a bunch of people in a house and see who can survive it, you know. But you know, that was kind of what that was like, because there was just so many, you know. But man, I learned so much. I got to be so good friends with a lot of those people. But yeah, Willie was just a really great musical mentor. Working with Tom Brumley in Nashville. His thing was, I say in Nashville, in Branson, he was very, he had perfect pitch. I mean, like he could hear, I mean, anything out of tune. So tuning was like the real, like Tom, you know, God rest his soul. I mean, he was a great, great boss, great guy, but man, if you were playing out of tune, man, you would get that stare, you know, that like, hey man, and tune quickly, you know. And so, you know, that was really important.
That's a great habit.
And that kind of thing was not.
It's a great habit to pick up at that young age.
That was his emphasis, you know, was the tuning, you know, and stuff. But groove was not very important to him. Like, it didn't, you know, he didn't really think about it. As long as things were relatively on time, you know, he was, you know, fine with that. But Willie, I mean, groove was everything, man. And I learned so much about how he would treat different sections of songs, not just a different song, you know, because I would, you know, say, yeah, man, I kind of play things on the back, and it's like, okay, well, that works sometimes, maybe most of the time, but there's some songs that, we would play like sections that feel like robotic, and real, almost like, this is pre-grid, but almost like gridded out kind of stuff. And then the next one might be really swampy and way on the back. And I loved that of like learning and I still feel like, like you were talking about trying to, like your job is never through. I can't remember exactly what you said, but your education
is always never out for the pro.
School's never out. Yes. Yeah. I still feel like I'm trying to learn those things that he was teaching. And so much of that stuff though is just, it's so internal with him. Cause that's something that first day I'll never forget. Tom and Willie and I sat around for about 2 hours just playing acoustic guitars and Willie's, bass, and he's got like a size 13 foot, and just he was the rhythm section, man. Of just like, you didn't need a drummer, and he was one of the first guys that I ever worked with that played bass that drew people in, because the bass tends to be a very codependent instrument. I know when I'm playing bass, I'm really locked into the drummer, and he is as well. But man, he knows where the sweet spots are, like as far as like where the pocket is, and he's very. I think that's the reason why people like Steve Jordan, and Steve Gadd and people like that, they love working with Willie.
That's great, man. So how did you? Then you went back in the studio, and then you went out with Kenny. How did you hook up with Kenny? How did that gig come together?
Oh man, it's funny because the band that hired me when I was 19 years old in Branson, Missouri, that guy got the Kenny gig. 2 years after I got the Wynonna gig, he got the Kenny Chesney gig.
What is the likelihood?
Yeah.
This is such a cool story that you're telling. Like, I see this so many times. Like, it's almost like it's your destiny. It's so clear that certain paths were carved out for certain people, because the statistical likelihood of alignment of things to happen is like zero.
That's right.
And
that's right.
It just boggles my mind.
It is mind boggling. And but yeah, Whitebeard is his name, and he got the gig with Chesney in '98, and there were a few times when he would call me through the years and was seeing if I was interested in playing, and like when I was with Wynonna, I just didn't want to leave that gig, and there was a couple other times that some things came up and it never quite worked out, but Wyatt and I did a couple things outside of Kenny Chesney's thing, and so he calls me in 2011 and says, "Hey man, we're looking for a guitar player, and do you know anybody?" Because I'd already kind of like not done it a couple of times before. And I said, "Yeah, me." He goes, "Well, I figured you were, just trying to hang in town, do sessions and everything." I said, "Well, I am, but, I want to get back out there. I feel like it's time to get back out there. I've been off the road for about 5 years at that point." And
you're ready. You're itching to get, yeah.
And again, it was something inside of me. Like and this is something that's weird too, is that, for some reason, I had this thing, that I'm slow on use the words like premonition or things like that, because I just there's a lot of mystery to those kinds of things. But there was something internally that was telling me for about 2 years that you're going to go out on the road and you're going to be a utility player for a rock band. Now, first of all, I'm a guitar player, first and foremost, and then utility's kind of like, on down the line as far as like playing a lot of different instruments. Sure. But, and then also usually a utility situation is more of like, a real country kind of, thing.
Yes.
So when the thing happened with Kenny, I'm like, oh, okay, this is it. Cause it's not necessarily a rock gig, like as far as like most people think of him as being a country music artist, but anybody that comes to his show will know that, it is rocking. It's really, It's got a lot of energy, high energy, and like, you know, a lot of rock. There's more rock guitar in his shows than most rock shows. And I'll go on record as saying that. There's 3 guitar players in the band, you know, but they needed me to play, you know, I play other instruments as well. So it's just kind of weird how those things work out sometimes, how you get that thing of like, you know, and so
I'm a firm believer in that. And if you don't pay attention to that, I have found that's when you make mistakes.
I agree. And you know, it also, you know, I'm glad that I've got a good memory because, you know, it makes me think, and be thankful for, like, there's been times like, you know, I'm glad my mom encouraged me to not just put those other instruments in the closet and leave them there because I love guitar so much. She was like, hey, you know, maybe, you know, get those out every once in a while, and you know, you might want to brush up on that fiddle or whatever, you know. And so I'm glad she did that, and I'm also so glad that I went to Branson, Missouri, and worked there because I mean, I'll tell you, we were doing 700 shows a year in Branson. It was not easy. You've
got to be kidding! That is great tuition, man. Oh my God! So you did 3 years there, and like you're pretty much prepared to do any gig ever with anybody.
Yeah, well, I did. I actually, when it was all said and done, I had done 4 years there. I did 700 shows a year. My wife did 900 shows a year. Wyatt, my musical director with Kenny, he was doing like 1,500 shows a year.
How do you even do that? How do you do 5 shows a day?
Man,
like, what are you waking up at breakfast and like?
Yes. Well, here was my last schedule, because I turned down some gigs because I always wanted to be able to write and record, like that whole thing I was talking about. Like I don't want to just be around people all the time, you know. So I found for me 2 shows a day was plenty, you know, and even if it meant making less money, you know, I was good with that, you know, because I just wanted to like
700 gigs a year are good enough. Yeah, no one's gonna like call you a slacker, you know.
Right.
You know, well, it's embarrassing. You're only doing 700 shows a year. Yeah.
Well, my favorite schedule, because Branson, that's another thing that if you have 2 different shows, you might, like my shows didn't have the same day off. So I tell people that I've never lived on an island, but I feel like I have, because like when I was there, I could only drive so far any direction before I had to, so it formed kind of like this little circle that made an island where you could only go so far before I had to turn around and go do a show, you know?
That's amazing.
My favorite schedule that I had was my last year when I was working completely for Tom Brumley, because he already had a morning show at 10 o'clock where we would do like, he played on a bunch of songs for, well, he was one of the Buckaroos with Buck Owens. You know, he played Crying Time. You know, he played with Ricky Nelson, the Stone Canyon Band, and played on Chris Isaak records, Rod Stewart records. So it was so cool to get to play with him. I always loved his steel guitar playing. But he did and his dad was Albert E. Brumley, who he wrote "I'll Fly Away," the gospel song that he had written like 800 gospel songs. So they had this whole family show where they would do all these songs that, you know, had something to do with their family and everything. So that was a 10 o'clock show in the morning. Well, then they tried this thing called a breakfast show, like at 8 in the morning. So I would get up every morning at 6 o'clock.
And you had 2 gigs down by noon.
Yes. But here's the cool thing. By let's see, it'd be Saturday, I'd be done at noon, and I wouldn't have to be back at work until Monday, because Sunday being the same days off. So that was the first time that I was actually able to go home and do things and, like, you know, kind of
like normal,
get off the island. Yes, and so I did that for about a year, and then we moved to Nashville and stuff. But it definitely prepared me. Like, I feel like touring is a lot easier than that was, and I really thought that, you know, sleep in my own bed at night, that would be easy, you know, doing that, you know, but there's really that's one thing I'm learning about, you know, the music business, is there's just really no easy way. You know, when you think, well, yeah, if I was a producer, then I could stay home and I'd have more time with the family and stuff. Well, you know, maybe you can. I know I've never worked for Frank Rogers, but I hear that, you know, he's very on purpose about that, like squaring time away where he only takes so much work and he's done at a certain hour. But man, a lot of times people, you know, when you're producing, you're working with this artist, and then you take on this artist, and the next thing you know, you're, you know, just working all day, every day. You know, it's like sometimes that's harder to balance than even just touring, where you know that you're going to be off this amount of time or whatever, you know. So
I think in general, I've been self-employed entrepreneur for 20 years, and all of my buddies, everybody I know that's self-employed, nobody has had it easy. You might have a guy here and there, like this guy that somehow manages to, you know, scale things up, and maybe they've got somebody watching the shop and whatever the business is, but that's really few and far between. And I think anytime you're an entrepreneur, and you're an entrepreneur, you know, you're an entrepreneur in the music business, you know, you got a bunch of things going on and you're working for yourself. That's a business owner. I don't think anything, I mean, I wish, you know, someone point me in the direction of the easy money or the easy, not even the easy money, that just there's a lot of responsibility running your own business. There's tons of moving parts. You got to have eyes all over, open all the time. You got to be very adaptable to change. You know, and you have to not be afraid to take chances and make moves quickly if you need to. And, you know, so I think some of that is like folklore almost, you know, I mean, like, I don't know too many, and I've interviewed, like I said, 350 guys. I could honestly say none of them not one person comes to mind that hasn't had a really great work ethic and worked their tail off.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, you know, when you love what you're doing, you know, you're inspired to work as well. You know, in fact, if anything, that's what I have to watch is not, you know, I mean, I won't say that I'm a workaholic, because I'm not, but, you know, I can get really busy if I allow myself to, and I can tell when my work is starting to suffer because of my work, you know.
I totally get that, man. I know sometimes I noticed, like, I realized this about myself years ago, and I had, when you find yourself in a rut, you know, I think the normal reaction is, you know, when you've dug yourself a hole, the normal reaction is to dig faster, to get out of it, right?
That's right.
But the reality is you got to put down the shovel.
That's exactly right.
And then because then you get vantage point, you get perspective, you get clarity, and then, you know, even if you can't get out of it right away, you can say, okay, let me get a plan. I agree. I understand, man. Exactly. You're exactly right. And you know, and that's the thing. I mean,
you know, I try to keep a busy workload, but at the same time try to, you know, definitely take time for the things that matter the most, you know. And the good thing is I've been really blessed to having a wife that's always supported me, like as far as she's never doubted me, always has encouraged me in music. And of course, she's a musician herself, but she also, when we started, you know, when we had our two daughters, she, you know, I told her to let her make her choices on like what, you know, if she wanted to tour, if she wanted to, you know, do session work, whatever. And she just totally threw herself into being their mom and being, you know, here, you know, for them. And now that Savannah is doing so well, you know, I've tried to tell, you know, Katie, you know, my wife, I said, you know, I'm not going to say that she wouldn't be a musician or she wouldn't, you know, even be successful, but she probably, you know, you got to know that you have so much to do with this.
Oh my
because,
God, yeah.
You know, and not only that, she had a coffee shop when Savannah was 12 until she was 17. And so Savannah worked in the coffee shop and working with adult people, like taking their order and things, those people skills and stuff that, you know, and that's the thing. Like everything my wife's ever done has always been about the kids. Like that's why she had a coffee shop, because she knew that she could keep Polly, who was really young, she could keep her at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
And then Savannah, when she get out of school, could work there and everything. So, and I've tried to do the same thing. Like, you know, if I'm home, it's because of my family. If I'm out on the road, it's because of my family. You know,
yeah.
I'm you know, it's really important to us.
That's great. I was thinking about that when you had I was like, God, when did you see your wife? It must have been real tough. Those 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we've joked that I've been able to see my family probably more when I've been touring than when I was the 5 years that I was off the road.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I had to like take every single thing that came down the pike, and you know, it's funny because we're talking about health too, you know, earlier. that's also when I weighed the most, was during that time.
Oh, during the sessions.
Yeah, and just working all the time, and I got sick more during that time. Like there is a balance of like, but let's face it, sometimes there's also seasons in life, like
Yes.
there's times when you just gotta gut it out because you can't afford to.
You're doing something, you're building something, you got to hump it for a little while.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's right.
Man. You totally do. But yeah, man, I notice. I'm just so much better when I'm lucky. My wife exercises every morning at the gym too, so she gets my ass out of there sometimes. She goes, "Hey, I know you got work. You're going to feel horrible at 2:00 in the afternoon." Blah blah blah. I'm like, "Thank you. You're right."
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. My wife has been incredibly supportive, and I'll be the first person to say I would not have any business, whatever little success I've had without her. She's always, I think. And I feel bad for people that don't have that, because it's a blessing, man, to be honest. For me, I've thought of it that way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I do think, the tough thing, there was a time in my life when Branson was kind of that thing of where I was willing to give up my dreams of what I wanted to do beyond Branson to try to settle down, for the family and the stuff. Because it made sense to me. I was like, okay, there are theaters here, I don't have to go out on the road. But, there was always this thing inside of me that even though I had I think I was doing it for the right reason, who knew that, this life, 20 something years later, I've got more time with my family, doing better than when I would had I stayed, and that kind of thing. And so it's funny how sometimes those things work out. But I think that, that's something with my wife. She knew how willing I was to try to make it work for the family, and I remember her coming to me saying, John, you really need to give Nashville a shot, because, and I told her, I said, I don't want to do the wrong thing. And this is before we had kids,
Sure.
But I just, I didn't want to do the wrong thing for her and thing. And she said, I'm not going anywhere, so, when you do have that, it is unbelievable a great blessing.
Oh, it's just incredible, man.
Yeah.
But plus, could you imagine what your brain, the burnout of doing 700 gigs a year now that you're here 25 years later?
Right.
That doesn't even seem like you just die or something like that.
Well, and that's something that I did notice that, there's anything, which there's so many great things about Branson. I can't say enough good about, the experience of working with, veteran musicians and learn. It was, I call it my college. That was my college, but doing anything, touring, residencies, which Branson, that's a really long residency is what that would be. Totally. Session work, anything can become humdrum or a dead end if you don't, continually, stretch yourself. And, and I think that it's the same thing though, like with, it's funny how we're talking about health again, but like, I think it's the same thing as like when you're working out. If you only do what's comfortable, you're not going to grow.
You're not doing
gonna
anything.
grow. But then at the same time, if you overwork yourself, you're going to exhaust yourself. You're going to injure yourself. So it is about finding that balance, and I feel like it's the same thing with work. Like I think you should work hard, but not too hard.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I've gotten better. Like over the last 4 or 5 years, I would sit here all night long and work. And now like I get to a point where I'm like, I'm done. I'm not thinking. And in the past I don't do that anymore ever. I just like, this is because it costs me my own expense. And I'm miserable. I'm unhappy. I don't get to spend time with my wife. And I walk away. You're 100% right, man.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you about a few artists that you worked with. And if you talk about how you got the gig and maybe a cool or interesting story about working with them. And it's just real simple. The 3 guys that I brightened up at: Joe Walsh, Steve Miller, and Sammy Hagar.
Okay. Well, all 3 of those guys have one thing in common. well, they have a lot of things in common, but one thing in particular. I worked with them through Kenny Chesney, every single one of them.
Oh,
So I never toured with them or anything, but their record, I believe there's a live record with us and Joe Walsh. I think that he's on one of the live records, I think. But anyway, but man, that's been so great though. That's one of my favorite things about working with Kenny is that I've gotten to meet a lot of my, I've gotten to meet a lot of my sports heroes as well, because he's a big football fan.
That's right.
My first week on the gig, I got to meet Joe Namath. So I was like, this is really cool.
That's wild. Wow.
And,
you probably weren't expecting that.
No, that's got to mean a lot to you, man, growing up in the Bronx.
Yeah,
right? Namath, Broadway Joe.
Of course.
But getting to meet my musical heroes, I remember my brother had a couple of records that always stood out to me. One was a record, and then one was a CD when they first started making CDs. But the record was the Eagles' Greatest Hits live, or Eagles Live. It had the road case, like the red road case with the silver latches and everything.
I know the record well.
You open it up, and it had all the pictures and everything. Well, I remember listening to that. I go into my brother's room and put on the headphones and drop the needle and just listen to that over and over. And then a CD that he had was Under a Blood Red Sky, U2.
U2, yeah.
And I remember looking at those pictures going, oh my gosh, man, Red Rocks, man, that was just a dream of mine to go see a show. Well, I got to play with Joe Walsh at Red Rocks, with Kenny Chesney. And so I'm on the bus.
How cool is that?
I'm writing out a chart, for the song, and I'm listening to All Night Long, and I put on my headphones. I'm like, I just turned into like a 10-year-old kid, man, like in the bus like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, man, this is happening, man. I'm going to play with, Joe Walsh, and I remember meeting Joe for the first time. And of course, I always try to find some commonality with somebody of where, just to kind of make it maybe a little less awkward. And sometimes that could, work out well, sometimes not work out. But this one worked out well because, I told him, say, hey, a friend of yours hired me on my first gig, my first tour. And he said, who's that? I said, Willie Weeks. He goes, oh, Willie Weeks. Because, Willie used to tour with Joe and recorded with Joe. And,
okay.
And I think he toured with Joe. I know that he recorded with him, but I think he toured with him as well. But, so I'm asking Joe right after that. I said, hey, man, so I'm playing Life's Been Good. I don't know if I need to play acoustic on that or if you want me to play an electric. He goes, I don't know if I want you to play acoustic. Maybe play a Strat and put a little bit of chorus on.
That is so funny. You got his voice down, man.
I'm like, all right, for Joe Walsh, I will put a little chorus on a Strat.
That's so cool, man.
But I'll tell you another thing that I'll never forget. Nick Hoffman, he was in our band at the time, he was playing utility at that time, the first year I was out with Kenny. And Nick wound up getting a record deal. That's why I absorbed that part of the gig. They actually decided to not hire another. They made the band a little smaller. And but I remember Nick said, hey, man, follow me here at this one point. Trust me. And I was like, okay. So he walked me over, and right as Joe finished singing a chorus, he turned around and started trading licks with me and stuff, and so he knew that he was going to do that he was going to, and I thought that was really cool, Nick, to
very cool. How did he know that?
Yeah, well, he had worked with him a couple times before, and he knew that was kind of his shtick, and he kind of wanted to say, hey, you're the new guy in the band, I want you to get a taste of this, and stuff. So
that is
I thought that was
cool.
Really cool. So I've always been grateful to Nick for doing that.
How did it? You must have felt like not on this earth trading licks with Joe Walsh.
Oh man, it was so great.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah, it was really fun night.
Very
and then
cool,
Sammy, talking about the other two guys, Sammy Hagar. Man, that guy has such positive energy, man. I mean, we played for his 65th birthday in Cabo Wabo, and he was just killing it, man. I mean, just killing it, man. I just, one of the best rock and roll vocals, ever. And I just remember thinking that, oh my gosh, I hope when I'm 65 years old that I have this much energy, and I know that I'll never be able to sing like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's like this guy that like, he's like eternal Sammy. Because like when he was like 18 or whatever in Montrose, he sounded like, you know, an older man, and now he's an older man. He sounds like a young. I mean, he's just always Sammy, you know. But
that was a hell of a band with Montrose.
Oh my gosh! And we got to play Rock Candy with him. That was really there's some YouTube footage of us doing that. That's but that I've had some buddies go, hey man, I was scrolling for Sammy and I saw you playing with him or whatever, you know. But I've gotten to play with him 2 or 3 times, and you know what a great guy and a great singer, and I just love working with him. And I've only got to play with Steve Miller once, but man, the best thing I can say about Steve is his pitch is unbelievable. Like singing with, I got to sing with him, and like I always knew he was a great singer, but I had no idea he was that good of a singer. Like he is, and he's such a no one. If you really think about it, no one sounds like him. No one sings like Steve Miller.
You're right.
And I love his guitar playing too, man. I loved his guitar playing, but the singing is the thing that really jumped out at me of like going, my goodness, this is like one of the best singers I've ever gotten to sing with, you know.
You're right. You know what's funny? I was just listening. He came on in my rotation in the gym today or yesterday, and I thought that I said, man, I've really never noticed what a great voice. I was listening to his old stuff, but I was like, man, I've never noticed what a great voice Steve Miller has. It's funny that you say that. Yesterday I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Well, and you know, and I'll go coming back to Joe. I'll say the same thing about Joe. I kind of feel like Joe in the Eagles was kind of like George Harrison to the Beatles. That I think that Joe is a genius songwriter. That his writing got overshadowed because you had Henley and Fry, you know. But his songwriting, like I remember charting out "Life's Been Good," and it's like it's a masterpiece, man. It's just a really, really, really well written song, and his singing is really great. Like, you know, people say, yeah, he's a character voice. I'm like, no, man, really listen to him. Like, the guy's killing it, man. He's really a great singer.
Hey, I want to ask you, what song did you play with him where you were trading licks?
All Night Long.
Sorry, I wanted to get that before I forgot. But yeah, I agree with you. And he's so overlooked, like you said, because when he was with Barnstorm, he played lead guitar, rhythm guitar, piano, banjo, and he wrote everything. He's incredibly talented. I mean, I agree with you. He's a really talented guy, and I heard his interview. I mean, I'd love to get him on the show. Joe, if you're listening, please, I'd love to get you on the show, man. We'll have a great conversation. I heard his interview with you know, he got sober quite a while ago, but it's very nice. His sort of like openness about, man, getting sober was friggin' tough.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, and it's really, and which it is. I mean, I know lots of guys got sober, but he's very open about it, and it was just very refreshing. You know.
Well, you know, I'm just thinking here. You know, as you're talking about that, I was in a really weird window of time too, where like in the late 80s, a lot of my heroes were going through rehab and stuff. And I remember I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan play just a few months before he died. And man, he basically preached for like 5 minutes about how good it felt to he said it felt good to feel nerves, like to feel nervous. Like, and I'm going to tell you, man, his guitar playing, that was one of the best. That's some of the best guitar playing I've ever heard in my life, and it was just so inspiring. So I think that made a big impression on me too. Is that, you know, I was listening. You know, like he was saying some stuff, and you know, maybe some people were listening, some weren't, but I was. You know, it really connected with me. You know, because I knew that he played with a lot of heart and soul, and I really could tell he genuinely was loving feeling it, you know, getting to feel what we, you know, feel when we listen to him play. You know, I just wish he was still alive, you know, to tell him what he'd be doing, you know.
Was that the Jeff Beck tour, right?
No, I saw him. No, he that was the Eric Clapton, and when he did a In Step, which was right before that. And then right after that, he and Jimmy and I think Robert Cray Albert Collins and Clapton, they were doing this kind of, thing, and Crossroads thing or something. I can't remember what it was, but they were all flying around, and it was in Wisconsin, and they took a helicopter. I think it was a helicopter that crashed.
That was it. That was it.
Yeah, man, I've never grieved any celebrities except for, I've been sad. I've definitely been sad. I mean, I've even known some, celebrities that have died that I, obviously, was sad, but I really grieved Stevie for a week at least, like where I was just really, he was a huge, huge influence on me. Like he took me on a whole, there were three guys that really started kind of taking me musically into some different places. And it was him and David Gilmour and Mark Knopfler, and they're all Strat guys, but it's just, I really started getting into like the feel and touch and that kind of thing of music that, because I was a real, if I was getting paid by the note, I would have been a millionaire, when I was a kid. I was all about adrenaline, and like if you could hum it, it was too slow. That was my motto, man. It's just like, just speed, speed, speed. But I heard those guys, and it's like, and I figure out what they were doing, but I was like, man, I sound different. What is it? So I really immersed myself in a lot of those guys, and just really, that whole thing, like, I mean, when he died, I'd spent so many hours listening to his music and reading articles and everything. And I think also knowing that he got clean, it just didn't make much sense. It just, why now, but, that's probably the hardest I ever took a celebrity's death.
I hear you, man. All right, let's talk about gear for a few minutes, Jon. What's your go-to guitar right now, and what other two guitars of yours would round out your top three? I'm not talking about session guitar. I'm talking about instruments you like playing.
Yeah. Boy, that's a tough one. I guess I'll have to say my 72 Les Paul. That's kind of my, I've had it the longest. And I've gotten, that's probably been, that's, if I had one guitar, but that's really hard to say because I also love Strats and Spitshine, a company. Actually, are you in Orlando? Is that where you're based out of?
Tampa.
Okay, that's right. These guys. Wait a second. They lived outside of Tampa, I think. Now I'm thinking, I think they're outside. They are outside.
What's the name of them? Spitshine?
Spitshine, but they don't make them anymore. So, yeah, they don't make them anymore. But that Strat is one of my favorite guitars.
Tampa, Florida.
They
were in Tampa. That's wild.
Yeah, and then I've got another guitar that's a really special guitar. It's a Cal Custom, and they don't make them anymore. This was a company out of California, and this guitar is really, really great for playing slide and everything. And it's got a really weird paint job that it's orange and has like the guy that painted it painted for Harley Davidson for like 10 years. So, it's a pretty wicked looking guitar. But my favorite thing about it is I can do like some kind of mock steel kind of slide guitar kind of stuff with it that I really love. So that's a really special guitar. It's got many humbucks in it. That Les Paul 72, that's got to be like a battle axe. It's got to be heavy as anything, right? Oh yeah, it is. It's really heavy. But that guitar is a special guitar, though. I've never heard a guitar sound like that one. What kind of pickups are in there? Man, I think they're old DiMarzios. I think the guy put some DiMarzios in them years and years ago, and I never changed them. But they really, it's got this real darkness about it that it's not great for everything, but like for a rock guitar, like it really sings great because it doesn't have too much bite, Are those active pickups? Man, do they have a battery? Do you have to have a battery? No. Oh, okay. No, okay. No. Yeah, that's wild. I have never heard DiMarzios, and I like back in the day, I know they were real popular. I don't hear them as much now, Oh no, yeah, these were, I think those were put in like 83 or something like that, like early 80s. Yeah. Cool, man. Anybody, you mentioned Stevie Ray, David Gilmour, and Knopfler. Is there anybody who influences your playing that people would be surprised to hear about? let's say surprised. Yeah, a couple maybe. One, well, Willie Nelson is definitely a huge influence on me. Some people wouldn't find that a surprise because people that know me really well don't find that surprising. But people that don't know me, they don't hear, that necessarily. But I was, a huge fan of his when I was a kid. And I'm still a big fan, but I mean, I learned to sing and play a lot of his stuff when I was like 10, 11 years old and stuff. And just always, have always loved his music. And Savannah got to open for him last year in Chattanooga. It was so cool.
Did you go?
Oh yeah. Me and my wife went, and it was so great because, I'm filming it and everything as much as I can. She did a great show, and then Dwight Yoakam, who I'm also a really big fan of Dwight's, he was playing that night, and I'm just on cloud nine because I'm like, man, my daughter had a great gig, and she opened for Dwight, who I'm a huge fan of, and then now I'm getting to watch Willie, and I'm even a huger fan of Willie, and so I'm like every other song is like, oh gosh, I got to get a little bit of this, and then my phone goes dead, so my wife has happened to like film the rest of it, so I'm like, hey, hey, film this one, film this. So then I look up on stage and I'm like, oh my gosh, Katie. And she's like, hold on. I said, no, it's Savannah. And so Savannah's up on stage with Willie, and he throws his bandana to her, and she sings the gospel medley with him.
That is so cool. Did you get to go backstage and meet him?
No, it's not one of those things where Katie and I, we chose to like kind of pull back and let her have her place.
Totally get it.
I have met Willie on a couple of different occasions, and he was a really nice guy. But what's funny is when we went to go see Savannah in the autograph line and everything, we asked her, said, well, because she had also played with him in Savannah, Georgia the night before. And we asked her, said, hey, have you met Willie yet? She goes, no, I don't want to bother him. I said, Savannah, you're going to want to meet Willie. She said, yeah, but I just don't want to bother him. So, I just feel like I said, listen, Savannah, trust me. I don't care that he's 84 years old. He'll enjoy meeting, an attractive 21-year-old girl,
absolutely.
He will not feel like you're being,
yeah.
He'll be just fine with, shaking your hand. And she said, okay, Dad, all right, I'll go meet. So we had already come out to watch, Dwight's set and Willie's set. And Savannah said that she had gone to his manager and said, hey, is there any way I can meet Willie? And he said, yeah. He said, stand right over here before he comes up on stage, and I'll bring him around. So about 5 minutes later, he came back around and said, don't go anywhere. I'm going to go get him. She goes, okay, I'll be right here. So Willie comes up to her and says, hey, thanks for coming out here with us. And she said, thank you. He said, let's do it again sometime. She said, okay. He said, I mean like a bunch. And she's like, okay, sure. And so he's going up the stairs, and he turns around and goes, oh, hey, if you're sticking around, won't you come out and sing with me on the gospel medley? So,
wow.
So all this stuff had transpired. We're out front. We don't know any of this stuff is going on. So Savannah still has his bandana hanging on her mirror in her bedroom and stuff. So
that's so cool. And she didn't realize how much she would have regretted.
Oh,
had she not done that,
Absolutely. I mean, it's just,
that's
there's
really
some of those
cool.
things that you just don't, it's just, and that'll just mean more and more as the years go by too.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Now, Willie skipped the class that you took about not smoking weed.
yeah, he did. But we'll give him this though. I mean, he says that helped him not drink. Because he said that drinking was really rough for him. Like he said that he did not like the person that he was when he was drinking, but it's that's funny because that's another thing, because I was raised in a really strict Christian home where like my parents didn't really want me to listen to much rock and roll and stuff as a kid,
Oh, wow.
and so but I would I'll look back on that, and and I'm actually thankful for it because it's like they had good intentions, because I was a really weird kid for one thing. It's like, I mean, Kiss was really big at the time, and I was like, loved Kiss. Now that'd be an influence that people would not expect. Ace Frehley was one of my first guitar heroes, Ace Frehley, and but I remember, just loving Kiss, but my parents didn't want me, buying these records and stuff. And I could see that. I mean, you got a guy up there that's like, spitting blood, and,
probably not going to fit with a like strict Christian influence.
Yeah, exactly right. All these years later, though, I ran into Paul Stanley when I was playing with Wynonna. My brother, I was so thankful that my brother got to come out there to L.A. and hang out there, because when we were kids, I mean, we would have given our right arm to see Kiss out of their makeup, back in the day, and stuff. So we're in California Pizza Kitchen, which at that time, there were not a whole lot of California pizza kitchens across the country. It was kind of a big deal to go to one when you were in California. And so I was telling my brother about this place. It's really great. And so we go there, and I see this guy, and he turns around, and those eyes, man, like Paul Stanley's eyes that I saw. I told him, I said, "You're Paul Stanley, aren't you?" And he was with his wife and his kids. He said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Man, I got to say, you're one of the main reasons why, play guitar to this day, and he said, "Oh, really? Are you a professional?" I said, yeah, I actually am. And he said, "Oh, really?" He said, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually playing guitar with Wynonna Judd." He looked at his wife. "We just saw you on TV last night." So,
wow, that is so cool, man.
I thought that was really, really cool. So It was cool to have that, thing. But anyway, my parents didn't want me to listen to rock and roll, but they would take me to Willie Nelson shows. So I'm coming back full circle about the Willie thing. It's like, so I'm like, okay, all right, I'll go to Willie Nelson shows. And it was really great. But, it's just kind of one of those things where, I'm glad that there were parameters. That's something I think as a kid, and as I got older, like when I got in junior high, a little older, they let me.
They eased up a little.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I think it was a big deal for them to allow me to go out and play clubs, because like that.
I could see that. I could
the other way.
Yeah, that was very cool. I think that's a great piece of marketing, though. I'm trying to get my head around where I could use that. When Willie said, "Well, it saved me from drinking," and I'm trying to think, like, how can I use that? Like, I don't. Like, if I came home drunk, and I don't, which I never do. So, everybody else was doing cocaine, and so I was better off. I mean, but that's a great thing, man. I love that revert. It's like really good marketing.
Well, it's funny. You made me think of. I've got these friends who are like the grumpy old hippies now that, they'll talk about like, these kids and their cocaine today. I mean, our stuff was so much more pure and all this. I'm like, you come to that where the grumpy old man is actually talking about the level of drugs that he used.
We had the real drugs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'm like, okay.
That seems like a conversation not worth investing a lot of effort in, man.
Yeah.
That is quite funny. Although I'll tell you what, I was in Colorado a few years ago, and I don't know what they're making now, but man, I had a hit of that. It was like one and hit. I was like, it's definitely incrementally stronger than what they had. And I don't smoke weed on a regular basis, but I was out in Colorado, so of course and I was like, holy smoke. So I don't know what that stuff is in there, but it is much stronger than what guys were selling in nickel bags on street corners, anyway.
Yeah, they said the poison control has had a lot more calls and stuff because of, so much more edible things being out there that little kids, grabbing stuff. So, yeah, they're finding their way around that. There's going to be some, I guess, just like prohibition and things like that. Like you have to, there's definitely some. I think things like that, not to get controversial or anything, but anything like that, there's obviously pros and cons.
100%, totally.
And it's just trying to navigate, what outweighs the other, and hopefully we'll find the right way around that. What's best for everybody. So
I'll tell you what I did do. I bought those gummies back, and my dog at the time, she had anxiety. And I bought them back specifically for her. So when like the rain, like we get bad rains here in Florida.
Yeah.
I would just give her a gummy, and it would really like chill her out. I mean, she would be freaking out, and it was just like terrible to see that. So I was really happy about that. But.
Yeah. I didn't mean to laugh, but I'm just
no, it's funny.
I just don't let your dog drop acid.
No. We draw the line at acid. Nothing stronger than acid gets in her mouth. No, she actually passed, man, like about 3 months ago. She was 15. No, it's okay. It happens. It was just like I was a bowl of Jello, man. I was bawling my eyes out. I was so close with that dog, man. That's like,
oh yeah, we got a dog that's 18.
18?
Yeah.
I've never heard a dog living that long.
Yeah, she's 18, still kicking.
That's amazing, man.
She's a Dorky, a Dachshund Yorkie mix, and her name's Ruby.
That's amazing.
And
18, man.
Yeah, still kicking.
That's great. So she's as old as your youngest daughter, right?
No, she's older than my youngest. Yeah, my youngest is 12.
You told me.
And then Savannah, well, I'm terrible at math, but I guess she was 6 whenever she got Ruby.
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
so that's great. Hey, what was your first guitar?
My first guitar was this little. It was made in Korea, and I don't even know what the brand, but it was a little 3/4 size guitar. And man, I will never forget that day. I got it for my birthday when I was 7, and I remember my parents. I'd gone to this place called Jay's Music in Kennett, Missouri, and I found that guitar on the wall, and it was red and black, and had a white pick guard, and I thought, man, I just loved that guitar and wanted to get it, and my parents asked a guitar teacher who I wound up taking from Hoyt Wooten, who lived in the neighborhood next to us, if he thought that I was too young, and they said, well, it's different with every kid, does he, seem to be really interested? And my mom said, well, yeah, he sings harmony with me, and just really, really is into guitar, and into music and stuff. I think he really wants to do it. And he said, yeah, you should get that guitar for him. So my birthday, they gave me my gifts and everything, and I'd opened everything, and the last gift they handed to me, and it was a shirt. I'm like, oh man, I didn't get the guitar. And I was trying to be a good kid and not act like a spoiled brat and just be grateful for what I did get, everything. But my parents were always good about, whenever it was me or my brother's birthday, pick a place to go eat. And so Pizza Hut was a new thing in Kennett, Missouri at that time. So I picked Pizza Hut.
Sure.
They said, why don't you go back there and try on your new shirt and we'll go eat pizza, So I went back there, and I'll never forget it, man. Had a bed, and the bedpost, my mom had leaned the guitar up against the bedpost.
Wow.
And had a birthday card stuck between the strings, and with my name written on the card. And I mean, that changed everything,
That's cool, man.
It's really cool. And I something I gotta say about my mom too, and my dad, both of them. My dad sacrificed a lot. Like he worked, he being I used to kid people. People ask me what my dad did, and I said he was a drug dealer.
Yeah, you said he was a pharmacist, right?
Yeah, he's a pharmacist. When you're a musician with long hair, you tell somebody that your dad's a drug dealer, always got to rise out somebody. But yeah, he was a pharmacist for years, and so he would work long hours, 9 to 9, and a lot of times. But man, I mean, he drove me around to so many shows, and was very supportive. But my mom, something that she did that I'll never forget, when I quit taking guitar lessons, we moved from Kennett, Missouri to Paragould, Arkansas, which is about 45 minutes away. I stopped playing guitar for a little while because I just was burnt out. I guess I was would have been about between 9 and 10 years old. And
did your dad get another shop? Is that why you moved?
No, I was going to a Christian school, Crowley's Ridge Academy, which we were driving back and forth from Kennett, Missouri, which was a long drive. And they decided to find a house there that was closer. And my dad did change jobs for that, but it was mainly to be closer to where my mom was teaching and stuff. And so we went there, moved there, and I remember I stopped playing guitar for a while, and my mom was like, why are you not playing anymore? And I said, well, I'm in a rut. I keep playing the same thing. I don't know. I get tired of playing the same thing. And she said, well, would you want to take lessons again? And I said, only if Mr. Hoyt, taught me, Mr. Wooten. And she said, okay. And so she, after teaching school all day I remember it was Wednesday afternoons, we'd be getting done at school about 3:00, go all the way over to Kennett, and my lesson was like at 4:00. And then when I got done with there, we would come home, grab supper, and then go to church on Wednesday night, and that was a big deal for her to do that.
That really is. Yeah.
And she did it for 2 more. I took lessons for him for 2 more years. And then,
did it pick you up?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It got me to where I was learning more about bar chords and position 1 chords and opening the neck up more. And I remember when I was about, I guess 11, is when he told me, he said, you can be self-taught now. I've taught you everything I know to teach you. And so that was kind of bittersweet because I was really proud that I felt like, wow, he thinks I'm that good. But then I was sad because, he was definitely one of those, and he just passed away last year. So,
oh man, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, man. Yeah. But he, I remember he would always encourage me and attaboys, I always, he'd call his wife in there, hey, come listen to Jon play this, and
wow,
stuff.
Wow, that's real supportive, man.
Absolutely. And so getting around full circle, I can't remember if we were on the record a while ago, but earlier we were talking about teaching, and I still teach, I've got a handful of students that I take on, and it's one of those things to where I don't really have a lot of time to teach and take on many students, but I will when I can, because teaching, my mom being a school teacher, there are like 15 school teachers in my family. My brother is a school teacher today, and then Hoyt Wooten being such a great guitar teacher and how much he meant to me. Teaching is something that's kind of something that I get fulfillment from it because I feel like that's in my genes, the teaching part, because it's not for everybody. I mean, I know some great guitar players are terrible teachers.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like with, that I enjoy helping people learn, about music,
Is your brother live in Missouri or is he in Nashville, New York?
No, he actually lives in Germantown, Germantown, Tennessee, and he teaches at Bartlett High School, and it's right outside of Memphis, Tennessee.
So he's about 3 hours from you, probably.
Yep, that's right. Okay. 3 hours. Yep.
Is your folks still around?
Yeah, they are. They still live in Paragould, Arkansas, where I grew up.
That's really cool, man. That's great. I'm happy to hear that.
I just got to go back and go to a football game with my dad at Arkansas State University. My dad, my brother, and my nephew, Charlie. We all went. We try to go see a game a year if we can. So. Yeah,
that's I do that with my younger son. I take him to a game every year. It's a good tradition to have with a family, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Desert Island Discs, top 3. Top, just for now, man. I know if I asked you tomorrow, it might be different, but.
Oh man, that is a tough one. Oh wow. I'll try to be versatile here, which means definitely going to leave some things out. I'll try to pick one that's like what I'm listening to now. One that was really formulative for me, and I guess one in the middle. I guess I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Man, this is so hard. This is really hard for me to do. I'm going to go with. Man, it's still hard for me to. Let's go with Kiss Alive for when I was a kid. Just I gotta give it nods. I don't carry that with me today, so maybe that's not a good island but I'll give them props just because they really got me into music. And I'm going to go with, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Let's go with Van Halen 1984, because it was such a huge record for me to like learn so much about guitar, just wearing that out.
It's a great record.
And now I'm just going to have to go Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, because that's one I've carried from the beginning to the end with me. Man. And this is so hard because I'm leaving out so many. Like I didn't even mention one Stevie Ray Vaughan record, and I didn't mention one Led Zeppelin record, which I love Led Zeppelin. But man, those three for those reasons today. Yeah, it'd probably be different tomorrow.
Yeah, man, it's just a tough question. It's another tough question, man. What is some of the most important things you've learned about yourself, Jon, through your career experience and through life in general?
Well, did you say the most important or the toughest? What would you say?
Man, you know what? You could answer that however you'd like, important or toughest, because I think maybe toughest is probably a better question.
Okay. I think that I've learned like if I could go back and change anything, I don't think I would change many things, but if I could talk to the kid when I was younger, I would say play to win instead of playing to keep from losing. I think there's a difference. You
would have been more aggressive.
I would have been less scared, less worried.
Sure. That's tough.
Less worried.
Yeah, it's a tough thing when you're young.
Yeah. And I think I've learned that I think two things. I think being too extreme on this can be like you hear people say, never burn a bridge. Mm-hmm. I don't exactly agree with that. I think it should be last case scenario. I think you should exhaust every effort to keep from burning a bridge. But sometimes you do need to set boundaries, and sometimes that means not going back somewhere. So I have learned that's that's something.
Like you should have left a gig sooner than you did at some point.
Or not that, not so much that, but sometimes when you've and I don't really want to go into detail just to protect people on the other end, but I think there's certain situations where you realize that it's just best, to go separate ways, whether it be in a relationship or a band or, sometimes there's just boundaries that you need to, that sometimes it's time to move on, and
I agree with you, man.
And that doesn't mean that you hold a grudge. There's a big difference between holding a grudge and, but I do think there's, I think there's some unhealthy relationships that you keep going back to that are not good, and
it's funny, man. I'll never forget a therapist told me one time, she said something, this was a long time ago. You'll tell by the comment. She said, you break up. And I think we're talking about divorce because this is my second marriage and last.
Yeah.
But after 26 years, we're good.
Good, man. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Really, my wife, congratulate her because I don't know if she put up with me. But
well, hey, my wife's 25 years this December, so
congratulations.
I'm sure they can talk.
It's work, and people, it's work. I mean, I don't mean bad work, but you have to put effort into that, man. It's just like, it's not like. It's like your business, man. If you stop working your business, it stops working. If you stop working your marriage, it stops working, man.
That's right.
I always thought so. But this therapist one time told me, she goes, it's amazing. She goes, you break up and then across a crowded room in a smoke-filled bar, you go pick the same person you just broke up with,
Yeah.
And I always had that in my mind to make sure I did not do that, and I didn't, but I thought it was good advice. But what you said, you got to move on sometimes, man. It's not happening.
Well, man, it's funny that you said, because it makes me think of something else that I've learned, that I say I've learned, I should say that I'm learning. Perfectionism can be good at times, but it can also be really, it can really handcuff you if you're not careful, And so what I've kind of come to learn is, I remember a guy, you're talking about therapist told me one time, because I was dealing with perfectionism. I remember when I first got the gig with Wynonna, I mean, I was, and she was a great boss, but she held high standards, and, I was really, I got the gig so quick that, it was pretty nerve-wracking at first, and I've tried not to. I went back and told some of my buddies later.
Hey, you sound different than you did over the phone.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So I was like, really, it was just kind of one of those things. Like, there's always that thing where you think, man, am I going to be able to, hold on to this or get,
Of course.
And but the thing is I've always been my own worst critic, and I was way harder on me than they were on me. And to a degree, that was good. I got a lot of benefits from driving myself with negative energy for many years. But there comes a point where that's like fire that can kind of warm you, but after a while it can burn you up. And it was starting to burn me up. And so I had to get a grip on that. And so I remember this therapist was telling me, he said, I want you to picture the most perfect person that you know. And so I thought, and he said, do you have that person in your mind really well, envisioned really well? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, do you like that person? And I said, no, I can't stand to be around them. And they said, well, why are you trying to become somebody that you don't like? And I thought, wow. Okay, that was an eye-opener. And then another thing that was eye-opening. Yeah, another thing that was eye-opening for me is he said, okay, now I want you to think about the most perfect musician or the best musician that you can think of. And I thought of a musician, and he said, you have that person in your mind? I said, yes. And he said, have you ever heard him make a mistake? And I was like, yeah, a few. He said, part of your problem is arrogance, and I was like, man, it just kind of like, it socked me in the gut, because I thought, I'm not arrogant. But he said, what I mean by that is you hold yourself to such a high standard that you allow somebody that you admire to make mistakes, but you won't even allow yourself to make, mistakes. So, man, that really, I really had to swallow that pill and chew on that for a while. And so now that I've got kids, Katie and I have our kids. Savannah and Polly are very self-motivated, and they can be hard on themselves sometimes. And I'm like, oh man, it just breaks my heart, because I think, oh no, I feel like I'm more equipped to kind of tell them that, look, don't be so hard on yourself. And also, that's another thing I wish I could tell, I wish I would have known then that, it's kind of like what we were talking about with working out earlier, like, failure is not a bad word. Failure is a good word, like if you grow from failure, and don't be afraid of it, embrace it. And it's how you handle it that a lot of times, I mean, when I think about, even failures, and like Leo Fender was trying to create an amplifier that would not distort.
Right.
Well, what does everybody love about Fender amps? Man, you turn it up to this, the sweet spot, and it breaks up. This mistake is what we love. And that's something I feel like I've learned, is that the magic, all the good stuff is in between the beats and in between the notes. And that's something that, not to get all preachy or anything, I'm not anti. I'm talking to you over a computer. I'm obviously pro technology, and I don't mind using it. I use it all the time to make music, but I think that sometimes music and computers can be like plastic surgery. Like, some people just don't know when to stop. And like, you can have a really beautiful woman that looks like a scary, waxy mannequin after a while. And I think music can get that way too sometimes, where the very thing that draws you to something, sometimes you got to allow yourself to be flawed, because just your perspective is not always what other people's perspective is, and like sometimes what you think is ugly is actually what they really love about you, sometimes. And so I'm getting better at embracing that, like trying to get better at the things I'm not good at, but at the same time accepting like, hey, I'm better at these things and some things I'm not so good at. And that's also like getting right back to why I try to take some gigs that maybe aren't comfortable for me, but it's like, it humbles me because I think, well, I'm doing something I'm not, is not my first thing. And it's also another reason why I like to play other instruments and stuff too. Is just to always keep learning.
Yeah. I think just people, when you're driven, you tend to be a tough critic on yourself. I think that's inherent in if you're a driven person,
Yeah.
It is what, and you got to learn, like you said, at a certain point in time to forgive yourself or whatever the thing is for you. And I work on that a lot too. And I to give myself credit, I'm happy with what I've done with that, because I used to be really ridiculously like ruthless. And then I'm like, does it matter if I come in at, 96% instead of 99? Because you got to do a ton of extra work to come in at 99.
Yeah.
And the only one who notices it is me.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And it really does, there comes a time where, you really have to define, things on your terms. Like you said, like when we were talking, I can't remember if this was on the record either, but we were talking about, coming to terms with like when you accept money or pay or whatever, it's really not numbers that mean anything. It's really what you're at peace with, that you feel, what, I know that this is what is best for me and my family, whatever that is. And that's something that, like, I'm a very driven person, but at the same time, I know that there's certain parameters that I'm okay to live within, of like knowing that maybe if I reach, 80% of my potential as a musician, but I've been able to be a better father, a better husband, I'm good with the 80%. Now, that doesn't mean I'm settling, because I'm not settling.
It means you only got so much energy and you got to prioritize.
That's exactly right. And another thing that I feel about that too is like, I know that like being in this, doing sessions for people all these years, that I've learned that, and being an athlete too, that, I mean, I'm not an athlete now, but when I was, as a kid, parameters are okay. It's like if you've got 3 hours to cut something, that's why some people do not like doing sessions, because they always feel like they leave something not as good as it could be. And there's some truth to that. But at the same time, that's also kind of like the basketball player in me, of like, when the clock runs out, you can't really go over and say, hey guys, I feel like I could play better. Can we put another quarter on the clock? They're like, no, man, hey, it is what it is. That's the score today. And I kind of feel like that's the way I give it all I got. Every time I go into work for anybody, I give them all I've got. But some days, I do better than others. But, it is within parameters. You have to leave and go on to the next thing, and kind of move on,
I totally agree with you, man. And do you have any hobbies outside of music?
Outside of music, I enjoy hiking when I get to. I love sports, not so much as a player anymore. I used to play, but broke my hand playing basketball out on the road back.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'2.5". I'm not that big.
No,
yeah. But I broke my hand, and I had to kind of slow down on all that kind of stuff and make some choices as far as that goes. But I love watching sports. Like
you play fantasy? You play fantasy football?
No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. I'm such
too competitive.
No, it's not that. It's just I'm such a team guy.
Okay.
That for me, it's hard for me to really pull for individuals and on different things to make. I'm more of a team guy. Now, where I will be, I do drive a lot of people nuts. Is sometimes I have more than one team.
Right.
Like in football. Well, I should say baseball. Growing up in Arkansas, Missouri, I'm definitely a Cardinals fan. They're my favorite team. But I don't know. Are you a Yankees fan?
I'm not really a big baseball guy, but I would root for the Yankees every day over the Mets if I had to. But
yeah, I'm a Yankees fan. For whatever reason,
that's odd because everybody around the world except people in New York hate the Yankees.
It really is odd. But I look at it for whatever reason. My dad just told me recently that his grandfather was a big Yankees fan. I never knew that. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But I knew that my brother was a big Yankees fan. This is back when Reggie Jackson played there, Dave Winfield.
Yeah, in the 70s.
Billy Martin. Yeah, Billy Martin was the manager, and Craig Nettles, go down the line. I think also watching TV, I was able to see them on TV as a kid because, that's, you and I probably grew up in the time where we were the remote controls, we got up and changed the channels for our dad and stuff. And so, you kind of watch what you could watch, and the Yankees were on TV a lot. So they're my second favorite team. But if they were in the World Series, I'll be wearing all red for the Cardinals.
I was going to say, you're probably going to pick the Cardinals. Yeah, you got to do it. I grew up 3 or 4 train stops from the original Yankees. Actually, less than that. I was on 161st. I grew up on 183rd, so maybe 1 train stop away, or two train stops away. So I went to the old stadium quite a bit. In fact, this is really weird. I have a mug. I don't know how this still exists in my house it says it's a Yankee mug with my name, one of those mugs that your name on it.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's brand new. And I was just looking at it the other day and I use it all the time. How did I even have this? Cause this has got to be 30 years old. So.
Yeah, man, I got to show you this. I was just in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. You were in the city recently.
Yeah. So I came back with
look at that, man.
A replica of the 98. Yeah.
Very cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah,
and I was surprised you told me you like New York. Not people from smaller towns don't use. There you go, your Yankees helmet, man. Is that a bank or just as a helmet?
No, that was. I got some ice cream. So.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, a lot of people from smaller towns are. I can understand it. It's like smothering if you're not used to that.
Well, it is weird that I would like it, but I think maybe it's kind of the same thing. It's like the opposite of Kenny Chesney. Kenny Chesney is huge in the Northeast. Our biggest numbers are in Gillette and Foxborough and in New York and Philadelphia, all up in the Northeast. And I think it's because it's so different. His music and his whole thing, the country and the island thing, it's so different. Well, just reverse that, and that's what it's like for me. Going to New York, it's very opposite of the way I grew up, and so it's kind of I've seen. Well, I remember as a kid in the '70s, my parents took me to New York. It was '77 or '78, I think, and I remember back then they would say, leave Manhattan before the sun goes down because
it was really bad. That was a crack era. That was really
And we were staying on Long Island, and so I think being a kid, getting to go to all those places at a young age, that made a huge impression. And then for whatever reason, for me and my wife's 10th anniversary, we went to New York. I look back. I had some time there I was working, and so I had some days off where we were able to stay after.
That's great.
And so we did that, and then 10 years later, for our 20th, we decided to go back and go to New York. So, and I've always loved, when we're touring and stuff, there's just certain energy.
You can't beat the energy. It's crazy that you don't. It's hard to experience.
I love the foot traffic too. There's just something about walking everywhere, jumping on a train, and man, Central Park, that's something for me that
it's very pretty.
It's just I don't know. I love New York City then, and if I could afford it, I would have a place there and still live here. But
that's what I say, man. But it's so crazy expensive.
Oh, it really is. It really is, and great city.
Well, man, I'm going to ask you 2 more questions, Jon. I appreciate so much your time. And they're both tough questions. Toughest decision you ever had to make, or hardest thing you ever had to do?
There were, boy, that's a tough one. I think The toughest decision I ever had to make. And that's a hard one. Probably the hardest thing I've ever had. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do. There's some things that I could probably say, but it's kind of hard to talk and describe it without being so generic that you could get the story. And if I told the story, I wouldn't want to really.
Yeah, I know, I get it. It's whatever
I mean,
it's the tough within the parameters of that you could discuss. Yeah.
I will say, with that in mind, the hardest thing I've ever done, Savannah, when she was really young, she had, I guess she was like 6 years old, and she had childhood anxiety disorder. And we had to get some therapy for her and everything to deal with. She started developing a couple of phobias. One, she was deathly afraid of riding in the car. She was always afraid that we were going to have a wreck or, so we, and she was afraid that something was going to happen to me and my wife, and it started affecting how, going to school. Like, she didn't want to be, well, I remember one day, it was very important for us to have to, do it anyway, because that's the thing about those kinds of things, especially with a child. If you start going, well, let's start, this stresses them out.
Take today off, and they'll
and then the next thing the person is homebound, and they, then they start developing phobias within there, and and so you just have to go. And I remember dropping her off at school one day, and she was horrified to go inside the school and having to drive off. And knowing that I was doing the right thing, but how hard that was on her, it just it wiped me out. It killed me.
Wow. That is really tough, man. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Wow, that is that sounds like a form of OCD almost.
Yeah, well, hey, it kind of is. It's probably close kissing cousin. I'm definitely OCD for sure. It runs in my family.
Yeah.
And I it's weird because, like, for me, it's not so much. I'm not like, I know some people, they check the locks or they have certain tics.
Yeah.
Like, we're a big fan of the show Monk. I don't know if you ever watched that.
I've watched a couple episodes, but that's extreme, man. Is your OCD that bad?
No.
Oh my God, that's I felt so bad watching. I was like, oh my God, because I'm thinking there are people that are actually like that. I was like, oh
yeah,
it's paralyzing.
My thing would be, I could obsess on like a thought, get into something, go on, binges of just picking one out, just anything we've been talking about, football. I could maybe find a football player that I was, and not that I would be obsessed with them like a stalker or anything, but just reading books and,
I get it.
Learn the stats and everything, that kind of thing. That's kind of way. That's something that probably I would say with Savannah, it probably is somewhat related like that, kind of thing.
From what I've read, OCD is like a manifestation. It's a presentation of anxiety. That's just how anxiety presents in certain people as OCD.
Right.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I had OCD. I had a terrible childhood though, and I did that thing. I had to do this. It was like a really short run, and I didn't know what was going on, and I couldn't talk to anybody about it. But I had to touch the door handle 3 times, or something like that. And I remember as an adult, only because thinking I was so grateful that I grew through that whatever it was didn't linger because I remember being tortured at this. I felt compelled to and the same thing. I think something was going to happen to people, and that's right. It's and that's the reason why some people it manifests itself more in compulsions, like the touching, and then other people it's the obsessive, not being able to let something go, and stuff, and that's something that I got help with, and actually I take medication for it as well, which I'm a lot more open about that
nowadays. I've done that for 20 years, and
thank God, man.
And that's the thing, that I'm being more open about that, because used to, it's kind of like, I mean, one of my favorite shows ever is Sopranos. Love that show. But that's it's such a genius show, because like most people, like 9 times out of 10 people that I talk to about it, like, yeah, man, I love mob shows. I'm like, yeah, I love mob shows, but the genius part is you've got the toughest, crime boss
in therapy,
and he has anxiety disorder, and he's having to work through these things, right. And it's like, man, I thought it was such a brave show at the time, and it was, hate that James Gandolfini's gone, because I mean, what a gifted actor he was.
Incredible.
I thought he just killed that role, and stuff. But I think it's really important to, there are a lot of things that can help, with that, and a lot of times the sad thing is the more you try to cover something up, a lot of times the worse it gets too.
Because that creates anxiety.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, we tried to raise our kids, and continuing to raise our kids, to not feel ashamed of, like, when you have, something that, because nobody's perfect, that's the thing too, that's something that, I'm a, full believer in, is that, no one is perfect. I mean, we all say it, but I mean, like, to the extreme that, especially now that we have social media and everything, and, like, my social media is somewhat business related. So people only see the good stuff, and so they just think that, man, my life must be, fill in the blank or whatever. But that's the thing, is like,
that's not real. But I don't think people would look at your social media. I think that, like, what I think that is when I see somebody, like, I know a couple, and they're always so, oh, my wonderful spouse, and I'm so loving, and I know both of them are like miserable, man.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, and I laugh with my wife. I'm like, like, this is so over the top. I almost feel bad that, like, should I be saying that stuff about you? Because I just think that's like I'd rather just tell you that to your face. I think it'd be kind of weird to say that, and that's where I think it's like, like when they go, so your social media is just like you put pictures of your gigs.
Well, and
I don't think there's an implication that, oh, my life is perfect. Yeah. I look at that, I'm like, wow, man, this guy's working, man. He's here one day, he's there the next day. And, I know how tough it is that, from talking to all you guys, that, hey, it's great for 90 minutes. And then what do you do the next, or 22 hours of the day? It's like difficult,
Yeah, I think that's one reason why I've got a lot of stuff going on, though, is because I like to do a lot of different things, and I don't like to just, I mean, the only time I like to sit around is I can really veg out and watch, like, football on like a Saturday or a Sunday. Yeah. Or like I try to work until 9:00 at night if I can. And then after that, last night I had to keep working until 10:30.
I feel so good that you're saying that, because I work late like that, and I always feel like I'm the only guy, and I know I'm not, like my buddies, but it's like, thank you, because I feel like something's wrong with me, because, like, I'm like, what is, like, I should not be here, man.
Well, I'll try to knock it off, and this is just me, but I try to knock it off, and me and my wife will watch Netflix. We'll find a show or something to watch together, and I'll kind of I need like an hour or two to kind of, like, I'm not good at working and then just going to bed. That's not, I need some, and I'm even worse when I'm entertaining, like when I'm out on the road.
You need to decompress. So you were saying about at night, you like to wind down?
Yeah. I mean, like after the show, man, I've got some guys in the band, man, they can go straight to the bunk, but like, man, I have to like kind of like chill out and either read or watch a show or something to just kind of, come down a little bit,
Yeah. Well, I find that hard. That I would imagine I couldn't just play a show and I know you're drained, but you're putting out so much energy. It's really like, I can't see not, you got to wind down, man. That's like a lot of, a tremendous output of energy in a short period of time. You gotta like come back down from that, man. And you're all amped up. Wow.
Yeah, it's funny, man. You get into a routine too, like out on the road. Like for me, I usually will, I'll exercise in the first, like usually around noon. Well, right after, I'll usually lunch, brunch kind of thing. I sleep in pretty late and then exercise, and I try to practice, or record or whatever. I've got a remote rig too, and I try to do that for about 3 hours. Then I'll hit catering at 5, and then I'll go to the bunk and I'll try to take like an hour nap, hour and a half nap.
That's cool.
So that also like probably why I stay up late as well, because I don't like feeling like I'm starting, I don't feel like I want to be at the end of my day when I'm starting a show.
That's got to be a drain because you're playing at night. Yeah, for sure. Hey, man, last question. Best advice you've ever been given, and who gave it to you?
Oh, wow.
You've had a lot of really good mentors in your life.
I have, and it's funny, man. It's funny that I'm saying this, but man, I mean, that's a really hard one to pull out and just say, but I'm going to pull one out just because I feel like what I'm doing, like as far as music goes, it was a real a great piece of advice, especially at the time. I talked about Larry Rogers earlier, that and he had Studio 19, which he still does, but the original one they tore down. There's a parking lot there now, which that's something that in Nashville, it's like we've lost a lot of studios, man. But I'm building one though. I'm looking at that. I'm looking at like the Sonic Arbor, approach of like, you chop down a tree, you plant another one, so if they tear down a studio, somebody needs to build another one, so I'm building one.
There you go.
But Larry, I remember when I was a kid, when I first moved here, I asked him, I said, hey, I'm trying to, find my way in this business here, and I've just moved to town. Can you give me any kind of advice? And Larry's from Savannah, Tennessee, so he's got a real like thick accent. He said, any kind of success I ever had, I based off the hairs of my forearm. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And
clarify.
and he said, well, I'll tell you what I mean. He said, I've got this studio here, and if I had, somebody come in and sing something for me, and they might have a great voice, but there might be some fella that comes in and sings, and I just feel the hairs come up on I just know that they got this thing that I just can't. Or he said, then somebody will come in with a song. It might be a really good song, but it just doesn't move me. And he said, then I'll have a song come across my desk, and I just feel those hairs come up again. I'll try to get that song with that guy that had that voice. Then I get the Memphis boys like Reggie Young and all those guys to come in. He said, and I can't tell you how many times they say, they ran through a song and they'd say, all right, Larry, we're ready to cut one. He said, you done did. That was the one right there. And they'd come in and like, man, I could make this. And no, you ain't touching it. That's the one, because he said, I just feel it. He said, and then other times they'd hang up their headphones, come in. I said, no, y'all go back out there. And so that was really good advice because that's something that I'm trying to do.
Trust your intuition more, man.
Well, trust your intuition, but also, feel it, and make others feel it, and that's the thing that, and it's kind of, I've gotten away from, like, to me, perfectionism is not what I'm after. I'm after that. I'm after what, because that's what got me into music. Yeah. Perfectionism is not what got me into music. What got me into music is the hairs coming up on my arm, before I even, my memories don't even go back that far to when that started happening. Yeah. And they still do. I still hear people play and write and sing, and I still hear music that just completely moves me and raises the hairs on my arms. So that's why I'm building my studio. I want to try to help people I just want to increase the odds. I want to help people, move people. And that's what my life mission is.
Dude, that's awesome. You're a fantastic guy. I can't thank you enough for being you and spending time here, man. You're very generous with everything. And man, if I could ever do anything for you, please just pick up the phone and let me know.
Well, thank you, Craig. I enjoyed this.
And let me tell people where to find you. It's Jon Conley, JONCONLEY. And there's a few things online that places really, you can hit up Jon on Facebook. It's Jon E. Conley. Again, that's Jon. And on Instagram, same thing, Jon E. Conley. You have some new projects coming out. You want to talk about those?
Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff that I've worked on that I know that Luke Combs has his second record out. I was fortunate enough to play on Hurricane, which went number one, and now that was off of oh gosh, I'm blanking out here. This One's For You, and then the second record is This One's For You Too. So and so I'm on that, and that's been released, and so I'm proud of those two records, and also my daughter has
Savannah.
Now I'm not on her record that is coming out on Dave Cobb is playing on that, and he's got his guys playing on that. But we are going to be on a compilation record for Skyville, which is another internet show that's really, really great out of Nashville, where they've had Greg Allman, they've had Cyndi Lauper.
That's the one that Kenny Greenberg produces,
that's
right?
That's exactly right. Me
Boom.
and Kenny Greenberg are bandmates on.
That's cool,
Chesney.
man.
Yeah, so Kenny got us on that show, and so Savannah and I are supposed to be on their compilation record. So, and then Kenny Greenberg is on guitar on that as well. So, yeah.
When is that coming out, and where can people check it out?
I don't know yet. I know, in fact, I hope I'm okay to say that.
Well, this isn't going to drop for like a month.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that should be coming out. So hopefully I'm okay about talking about this, but I know that that's in the works right now. So I'm excited about that. And then there's, I'm just really grateful for all the records and that I've been able to play on. And a lot of them, are records that a lot of people won't, hear, but the people that do hear them, I don't ever take that for granted, and I'm really, I know that a lot of people, it's their dream to make a record, and some records, like the Luke Combs records, have been really huge. So that's been really good for my career. But, a lot of these records of people that don't get to, hit the big time like that. I'm just as thankful for those records as I am the Luke Combs records, because there's way more of those than there are.
Absolutely,
Luke
man.
Combs records. So, yeah.
And that's a slice of reality for people that, there's not a hit on every record, man.
Right.
So check out Jon's daughter, please. It's Savannah, SAVANNH Conley. And she's got a real good thing going, and listen to her music and support her music. And Jon, actually, two more things. If you need someone to help you with some tracks, this is a very smart player. And also, he gives lessons, which I was surprised. And if you want to get in touch with Jon on either of those things, best thing to do is to message him on Instagram. And again, his Instagram is Jon E. Conley, JONECONLEY. And don't, just be serious about it. I mean, these guys that have a lot of time. Man, that's it. Any final words of wisdom? You're awesome, dude.
Oh man, no, I guess the last words of wisdom is a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
There you go. A broken clock. Even a broken clock's right twice a day. There you go.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, hang on. I'll wrap up with you. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it with your friends on social media. We certainly appreciate and thank you for your support. Thanks so much to Jon Conley for spending time with us. I really appreciate it, and I hope all you do as well. And make sure you go to the homepage of everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list. You get advance notice of guests coming on the show, and you have the opportunity to send in your own questions. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.